In this lesson, you'll learn all about the piano roll editor, which is something that we saw briefly earlier, but in this lesson, we're going to go into it in much more depth. First of all, I'm going to create a new drummer track just so that we can quickly grab some MIDI data. So let's delete that, right click on this, convert to MIDI region. And then let's just drag this to a 4-bar loop. Now you can already see here the piano roll was on screen. Now you can access this at any time by going to the editors button or by pressing P. And like the audio file editor, you just need to make sure you've got the region selected that you want to edit. Now I can use the same functions for zooming as long as this window here has got key command focus as shown by this blue outline. Of course, if I press tab, I can give command key focus to this window. Press tab again, and now we're back in this window. So I can use the same things. I can highlight all and then press Z to zoom it, and then I can zoom in and out horizontally and vertically. Now, in the piano roll, you can also navigate by using the left and right keys, like this. So I'm simply pressing the right key and it's moving along the notes. Now, you saw earlier that we can click and drag notes in terms of pitch and in terms of time, and of course when we've got a drummer track, the pitch is going to affect the drum that we're triggering. But you can also use keyboard shortcuts for that. So as well as navigating left to right, you can also hold Option and then press down or up to change the pitch, like so. Or you can hold Option and Shift to move it by a whole octave, like so, and we can go up an octave as well. So they're all really handy functions. When you're using the piano roll editor, you're going to be dealing with velocity a lot, and you can change the primary tool here to velocity. You can do that in that menu, or you can press T and use this menu. It would be TV. But you can also hold Control and Command and then hover over a note and change the velocity that way. Now you can see as I raise the velocity, it changes colour, and when I lower it, it goes to a different colour. And you can also see this small bar on the inside getting longer. And that's representative of the velocity bar down here, because one other way you can do it is you can actually select as many notes as you want and you can control their velocity here. And velocity simply represents the aggressiveness or the volume of that note. So it all affects the timbre. As you go up, it will sound more aggressive, but it also affects the volume. So now as we go down, it gets quieter and less aggressive. And this simply represents, if it was a real drum, we hit it softly, it would be quiet and it would have a different sound to it. And if you hit it really hard, it's going to sound a lot more aggressive and a lot louder. And of course, you can highlight several and adjust their velocity all at once, like so. One other way you can highlight notes is by selecting them on the left here. So if I press that, it will select all of the crashes. If I press that, it will select all of the hi-hats. And then if I wanted to, I could move them up, or you could, of course, adjust their velocity. You'll notice that everything I do is reflected aurally. So if I move this up, I hear it straight away. And the same with velocity. If I turn the velocity up and down, it gives me constant feedback. And you can turn this off if you want to by selecting the MIDI out button. If I turn that off, it will stop doing that aural feedback and turn it back on. And there we go. So if you're ever doing lots of editing, it's getting on your nerves that you can hear everything, you just hit that button up there. Now, one other tool that's really handy in the piano roll editor is the brush tool. So if we go to T and down the bottom here, brush tool or B. And by default, this will simply draw in quarter notes. So we could use the pencil tool to do this, to draw stuff in. So let's say we want to add a cowbell. But of course, that only adds one at a time. And you can click and drag, but when you click and drag with a pencil, that adjusts the length. What if we want to click and drag and just add lots at once? Well, that's the brush tool. So go back to the brush tool here. And now what happens if I click and drag, it kind of paints them in. Let's have a listen. So nice and easy. Now the really cool thing about the brush tool is we can actually create different patterns. It doesn't have to be this default pattern. We can define the brush pattern here. So let's just say we want it to be only on these notes. And then for one bar, it goes double. Like this. So now we've got something that sounds like this. And what if we wanted to repeat this pattern? Well, we can go back to the pointer tool and highlight this. Then T, B to go back to the brush tool. Right click and define brush pattern. Now you might have also noticed when you hover over with the brush, it turns into a razor, so you can quickly erase certain notes. But let's now get rid of these. And now that we've defined that brush pattern, if we go back to the brush, we can now draw it in like so. And then we could repeat that in any instrument we wanted. And of course you can do as complicated a pattern as you want. When you're drawing in your patterns, you can also adjust the velocity as you're drawing in your brush pattern. So if I delete all of these and then start drawing in the pattern, but if I hold shift and move the mouse up and down, you can see it's controlling the velocity. So I can control the velocity as I go. So I could add that pattern like that at this velocity, and then maybe this one I could make a bit higher in velocity like that. And that's simply by holding shift. And let's just give you an example of really aggressive. So that's it for the brush tool. Really handy tool. But you can see all of your notes there and edit them really easy, or even just write in parts using the piano roll. You could create a whole drum part quite easily by just adding parts in with the brush and the pencil tool.